Hello and welcome back. Celebrating May the 4th with the painting of R2-D2's friend C-3PO. I actually like R2-D2 way better, but I wanted to paint C-3PO because the lighting reflecting off of all these different planar surfaces on his robot head were actually really good. Good practice and kind of interesting. Also, I paint people all the time, but painting a humanoid robot was totally different, so my brain couldn't just turn off, go into autopilot and just knock in the proportions. I had to really study the shapes. So that, along with a few other reasons, are why I jumped in on this painting. I was pretty excited to do it and very excited to share it. So let's do this. Today's painting is going to be a digital mixed media painting. I didn't just stick to my traditional oil brush and palette knife. In this painting, I used a real mishmash of different tools to get the effect that I was going for. So hopefully you enjoy it. Come hang out with me for around 20 minutes as I paint C-3PO and kind of walk you through what I would do, what I would call like a digital mixed media painting using Artrage. All right, let's get to it. This is watercolors mixed with the palette knife, and what I'm trying to do here is establish sort of just some mess below what will actually be the painting, and I'm gonna keep everything on one layer. It's not that I'm gonna add a bunch of layers, it's all gonna be on one, but I want the paint that I put down to have some interaction with what's there already, and I want there to be just some implied texture and some actual texture for to kind of allow for some serendipity. When I'm painting with traditional paint, sometimes I'm trying to go really fast and I might accidentally dip my brush in the wrong pile of mixed paint or something like that. And you get these like little accidents that come from the wetness of the media interacting in surprising ways. And I always like to try to give myself the chance for that to happen in my digital paintings too. So one of my strategies in Artrage is to turn on real color mixing. I love painting in Artrage with that turned on. And then I like to just sort of have this underpainting that's on the same layer as the one I'm working on and just kind of see what kind of color interactions happen as I'm working. So that's what I did as sort of lay-in, and that's why everything looks like some weird dust storm instead of a robot right now. But we'll get there, right? A painting like this is good training because, like I said, if I paint portraits a lot or if I do landscapes a lot, whatever you do a lot of, your brain can kind of shut down and you just can kind of autopilot the painting, which is cool, right? Because then you're kind of in that flow state and it just happens and it's really, really nice. But sometimes it's nice also to get into a painting where you really have to be in it and you have to be focused because all the proportions are unfamiliar. And this is kind of one of the main points I wanted to make, and with this painting is that there are things that are familiar to us because we see them every day. I instantaneously, if someone says C-3PO, I have the gold reflective robot in my head. But what I found out by painting C-3PO is that I actually didn't know exactly what he looked like. And it was surprising to me how much of the detail in the industrial design of his helmet and the neck pieces and some of the stuff on the chest was just not in my visual warehouse. And for something that I literally grew up with, that I celebrate and love, I love Star Wars, and it's a part of my like cultural imagination. It's a part of my nostalgia. It's a part of a great part of the things I enjoy, etc. Right? You would think that someone who's an artist and has this intimate experience and frequent experience with Star Wars, that I would just be like, oh yeah, totally. And I could almost draw it out of my head. Well, I couldn't at all. It was really surprising to me. So I want to talk about that. But before I do, I want to talk about what's going on here. So I'm working back and forth between my dark values, my mid-tone values, and some of the lighter values too. And the reason is I'm just trying to establish that full value scale. Typically, I would be really militant about getting all my dark values in first, and then work to my midtones and finish with my highlights, and then go back in and refine edges and stuff. But in this case, with this new subject, I was just experimenting with kind of laying in as much of the value range as possible, working quickly, trying to get a sense of the proportions. And in order to do that, I had to work all around the canvas, like at least around the subject, C-3PO, really quickly. And then, and I keep almost wanting to say R2-D2, who I like way, way better, but C-3PO actually is just, it was funny that I had a friend in high school whose mom just totally reminded me of C-3PO, but totally random. I don't even know why I brought that up, but here's the thing. Let's talk about the brushes I'm using. I'm using basically the oil brush with the settings you can see there. I left the settings panel open the whole time I'm painting. And then sometimes I'll use my own custom brushes. Sometimes I'll use the palette knife. And later on in the painting, I'll use the chalk pastel and a bunch of other things. And we'll kind of walk through that as it happens. But for right now, I just want you to see that I'm using a great diversity of things on top of the diversity of marks that were used to create that underpainting. And I wanted that because I wanted this to be a painting about the big kind of chunky shapes of light and dark, and I wanted it to have a sense of ordered chaos, and so I wanted to lean into that from the very beginning. The palette knife, when you set the loading, it doesn't have to be set to 100%, just anywhere along that slider, it's a really great tool for painting, and I found it to be a pretty crucial tool for the look I was going for here. Painting in Artrage is always beneficial because of the texture and how much it really feels like real oil paint, but that palette knife is a big part of me using Artrage these days. And I think what I really love about it is sometimes digital painting that simulates wet media and real media that's wet, the tendency is to lose some of your hard edges, your crisp edges, because everything's getting gooey, and that palette knife really helps you keep those hard edges. So, big fan. Going back to talking about some of the theory here, when we paint things that we're familiar with, we would think that it's just automatic, that like, you've seen 100 horses, just paint a horse. Or, you've seen, all these barns, we'll just paint a barn. And you can do that, right? Especially if you've got all this stuff kind of in your visual warehouse. You just know it. It's almost like a reflex because you've done it so many times. But there's a difference between like actively painting something 100 times and just seeing something 100 times. And I found that to be very powerfully like thrust into my consciousness as I painted this, because I've seen the original Star Wars movies so many times and watched the prequels and watched the sequels to the sequels and all of them so many times, and I love them. And C-3PO's in so many of the movies, and he was, there's some really poignant scenes with him in the last movie. What was it called? The Rise of Skywalker, and just a lot of cool stuff with this guy. But and I know what he looks like generally, but I was astonished with how much I didn't know. And that's one of the reasons, that painting is so powerful, is because it is consciousness expanding. When I sat down to actually draw the shapes and the light and find the values, I couldn't believe how much I didn't know about the shapes and how they all fit together on the face, and how unique the arches above the eyebrows and those chevrons below the eyes, and that weird vertical simulation of nostrils that was just kind of almost creeped me out. And then how boxy the mouth is, and how like the cross contour line that wraps around the whole head, intersecting that boxy mouth opening. It was just, there were a lot of interesting shapes. And it's interesting too because it's like, it's almost human proportions, but just seeing all the divergent stuff and all the divergent shapes and all the ways that it just fit together and didn't fit together the way I thought it would, really made me look closely. And that's what I was looking for. I wanted to do something that would make me pay attention, right? And then I wanted to interpret those shapes and those relationships in ways that were simple and ways that were attractive, and try to find brushstrokes to describe all this stuff in a way that was really economical. So not too different in terms of what I wanted from the painting to previous demos, but the subject was different enough that it just kind of awoke my senses, and that was really a good thing. And it reminded me like something that I always tell my students, which is we have to get our mind out of the way, and we just need to get as close to just kind of like a naked observation, just raw observation, without presupposing anything, being curious like a child, sitting there with eyes that are absorbing the subject in front of us, almost just like as if it was the only thing that existed. And my son is like that in such funny ways. Like if he's playing a game or watching something or making a craft or cutting paper or building something in the dirt pile or a sand pit or whatever, there's an immersion that's like just he almost has like no mind. He's just all in on the activity, and practicing that is really important. And I think it helps our painting because we get into that, our brain just is like illuminated with focal energy, and we get into that almost like a flow state. And with this painting, I did not get into like a flow state, but it definitely affords me the chance for that. This one I did kind of like on my lunch hour and was just kind of flying through it. But that's, I could see where this was helping me grow. I also liked painting the surface. So just the unique proportions, interesting reflections, painting a metal head. I've never done that before. And, when the practice here is instantly transferable to things like painting tech for sci-fi, or, painting robots for sci-fi, or painting, alternate humanoids for fantasy art. There's a ton of different applications. But you don't even need to find that transfer of relevance. You can just enjoy the painting that you're doing, And so one of the things I have to talk to my students about a lot of the time is, they'll say things like, oh, I've used up all my art energy for the week, or my art brain is tired. And there's all these kinds of statements that they'll make where they're basically admitting fatigue, admitting being sort of just worn out. And that happens when you're making a ton of artwork. But I think one of the strategies for being an artist is how do you keep it fresh, even when you're feeling it's kind of getting mucky. And I think for me, this was one of my strategies, was like familiar enough, but different enough. So it was like, it's like if you've gone to a Greek restaurant all week and then you go to a Turkish restaurant or something, and like there might be some similarities in some of the dishes but it's its own thing, And so I think that's kind of what I was going for here. So things I learned. I learned that the palette knife was really fun, and it gave me nice hard edges. And if I set the loading to around 40 or 50% and the pressure at around 20, 30%, I got some really effective marks. But they were really effective when they were applied on top of already existing paint. So it was nice to get some paint down and then lay that palette knife mark on top, and it helped just kind of angle everything up a little bit. I really liked that. The other thing I found that I really liked was the color scheme. I love blues and yellows and blues and oranges, and this kind of complementary color scheme. It really was a lot of fun to paint. The other thing I loved was listening to a Star Wars movie while I painted. It just helped me be there and kind of get in it. It made me think about all the things I love about Star Wars. And if you ever have the chance, in the comments, throw down your favorite Star Wars movie, or your favorite Star Wars character, or your favorite Star Wars scene. For me, it's got to be Yoda, and it's got to be just any scene with Yoda is my favorite. Even in the prequels, he saved some of those movies for me. So yeah, Yoda number one. I actually am a huge fan of Luke Skywalker as well. I think people will make fun of his his whiny voice in A New Hope, or they'll make fun of, how much of like a two-dimensional, he's like so two-dimensionally a good guy, or things like that. But those are actually things I love about him, that we don't have enough just like naive good guys sometimes in our film and TV these days. There's a lot of like realistic complexity in our characters, but I really love that Luke Skywalker wasn't like that. He was a good guy hero from that kind of more naive cut, and I liked that about him, which is why I didn't like The Last Jedi at all as a movie, because we didn't get to see the transformation of Luke going from this like guy who believed that there was good in his dad, when his dad was like the worst person in the entire universe, and what he did to the younglings, and on and on and on, but Luke was like, no, I still sense good in him, right? So how did he go from being that guy to the guy that wanted to, take the first shot at Kylo when Kylo was in his school? So it just, that and a bunch of other stuff just didn't make sense. The cynicism didn't make sense. And I'm getting on my soapbox here, but I remember the director of The Last Jedi saying, I wanted to give these characters these choices, have them face some things that would be like kind of the worst possible scenario. And I heard him talk about that, and then I watched the movie, and I just thought, well, that wasn't even close to the worst possible scenario, and I felt like there were just a lot of things about the movie The Last Jedi that I didn't like at all, but I still loved having the new trilogy, and I even as kind of as bad as the prequels were, I still like watching them sometimes, and I feel like there's just something so special in Star Wars for me, and they're almost untouchable. So and C-3PO, like I said, is not even close to one of my more beloved characters at all. He's just kind of the somewhat annoying sidekick of R2-D2, but I love the industrial, or like the character design and the look, the treatment of the character from a visual standpoint, and I love the operational relevance of C-3PO in the story. The function that he serves is very important, and it just wouldn't be Star Wars without him. So so that's some C-3PO here, and you can see me using the paint roller, the chalk pastels, the watercolor brush, the stamp brush with a bunch of the different presets, my own custom brushes, and some of them the brush designer custom brushes that are like, the pre-mades that come with the software, whether it's like Canvas 2 or these like three-dimensional dots. I'm using a little bit of everything because I just wanted this to be a kind of a chunky, messy, gritty interpretation of C-3PO. I did not want it to be a clean, refined, and detailed approach. I wanted to do a studio painting that felt like it was done plein air, and I think that's a little bit of my envy for getting out and doing some plein air, but it's also my personality to just paint a little bit fast and loose. So having a lot of fun with this, wanted to show you the technique, and wanted to just celebrate some Star Wars time with you guys. And sorry for my Star Wars ramble in there. I just randomly start talking about The Last Jedi and my discontent, which was completely irrelevant. But this is I don't know, this painting series like made me want to do a series. So I was thinking what I'm probably going to do with the rest of the week, maybe into next week, is do a different Star Wars character every day using a different piece of software. So I was thinking that, so here's my Artrage C-3PO, that maybe tomorrow I'll paint K2SO or Jyn Erso, or what's his name, and Captain Cassian or whatever his name is from Rogue One. One of those guys for tomorrow's painting, and maybe I'll use Rebel for that. And then maybe I'll use heavy paint to do like kind of a little bit more of an edgy abstract like Luke Skywalker. And then I'll use like realistic on the iPad for maybe a Leia painting, or maybe I'll take some requests. So if you have something you're like, oh no, you got to paint so-and-so, or please try this software or whatever, throw those ideas into the comments and I'll do it. It just gives me something fun to work on, because right now I'm teaching a lot of portraiture, and so kind of the more I'm doing as demonstrations for students, the better. And the more software that I'm using, the better, so people get more like inspiration to try new things. I've had a lot of students getting into using Artrage on their own devices, on their iPads with the new Artrage Vitae update. A lot of students getting into downloading Heavy Paint on mobile, and a couple trying it on desktop as well. I have people trying a little bit of everything, so just would love to see your feedback. And thanks for checking out this painting of C-3PO on the week of May the 4th. All right, guys, May the 4th be with you. Take care, and good night.